only other transmissions I would expect to hear from the tower at this point, directed towards me that is, will be any inbound traffic. And I'm listening on the frequency, and if somebody calls in over Lake Botanical, Brookline, or anywhere out to the west, I have to be aware of that and start being vigilant to watch for that traffic. The helicopter, while we were off, I had the video off, called the downwind. I'm going to assume that Cessna is going to be calling the downwind here shortly also.
Center Mike Echo, my phone right downwind, touch and go.
Cessna 9 Mike Echo, clear for touch and go.
Clear for touch and go, 9 Mike Echo.
Okay, so 9 Mike Echo, that Cessna called the right downwind for touch and go, let the tower know what they want to do, and the tower said, 9 Mike Echo, you're cleared for touch and go, and they repeated it back. Now, once you leave the airport, the Class D airspace, the airport's airspace, you can leave the frequency without asking. We are still about a half mile inside his airspace, so if I want to leave this frequency, I need to ask, and this is what I simply do. 86 Whiskey is requesting a frequency change.
86 Whiskey, frequency change approval, see ya.
Good day, 86 Whiskey. Alright, so I asked for a frequency change, and the tower said the frequency change was approved, and have a good day. Alright, now I'll demonstrate a steep turn to the left, followed by one to the right. We're at 2,000 feet. We're using Mount Monadnock as my reference point, which also happens to be a heading of 310. I'm in cruise flight, 2,400 RPM. I have the airplane all trimmed up for level flight. I do a clearing turn, so a gentle turn. I look around, look behind the airplane, all around the airplane. Then I'll come back to Mount Monadnock and look out the other direction to the right, looking behind me, making sure Mike hasn't pulled up in the bird dog alongside me, Tyson isn't buzzing me in the RV4, nobody's around. Okay. Mount Monadnock, 2,000 feet, we'll go to the left. I've done the clearing turn. I roll in, looking for 45 degrees of bank, just a bump of power. Start adding back pressure in to stay at 2,000. There's 45 degrees of bank. I've climbed just a little bit, so I'm going to keep the nose down to get back to 2,000 feet. I find my reference point of where the horizon is, and then nail that.
As you're in the turn, sitting in the left-hand seat, the horizon slices through the cowling at about midway on the cowling, which gives you a good reference point to find it. So find that place and then stick with it.
I'm going to do 2 turns around. Now, this I've stayed good. I'm just cross-checking at 2,000 feet. I come around. Now, if I mess up and the nose comes up, you can see the change in the horizon. I bring the nose right back to where it's supposed to be. I'm now 100 feet high. So I'm going to go just a little bit low to correct back down. And now I'm back at 2,000 feet, working my bank angle. Okay, same thing. If I go a little nose low, here comes nose low. See the change in the horizon? I just pull it right back up to where I need to be. And then if I need to make an altitude correction, I'll go a little high, just a little bit, to get back to my target altitude. Once I'm back at my target altitude, staying in my bank angle, and then here comes Mount Monadnock, I roll out, release any back pressure I had, pull the power back to 2,400. Alright, let's try one to the right. It's a different position on the cowling. A little bit of power, and I roll in. 45 degrees of bank. I find my place. For me, in a right-hand turn, for my height, it's about halfway. The horizon's cutting the cowling about midway. Now, for you in the left-hand seat, the picture, the horizon is probably going to be slightly above the cowling. Again, if I see it go up, I make a correction. If I see it go down, I make a correction. Looking for my Mount Monadnock as I come around. Cross-checking the altitude. Rudder, left aileron to roll out, release the back pressure, and ease the power off. If I'm going to do a power off stall, just like entering the pattern, power comes to 1800, I don't let the nose fall. If the nose falls like this, that's not going to work. I want to stay at 2,000 feet, so I keep the nose nice and steady. I bring in my flaps, that's going to pitch the nose down, but I don't let it. A little more back pressure each time, and then I bring the power off. Still at 2,000 feet. Now I start increasing the pitch until I get a stall. I have to increase it fairly rapidly. And there's the stall. Power comes in. I get to flaps to the second notch, and I start to climb back up. If I'm above 74 miles an hour, I can go to 1 notch of flaps, and I set my climb attitude out there. And I'm at my altitude. Actually, I'm above it, so I can level off and bring the power back. Okay, power on stall. We'll go into a full power climb at 85 miles an hour with 1 notch of flaps, just like we're climbing away from the runway. So here we are, we've established our pitch angle for 85, and now we're just going to start bringing the nose up. Nose comes up, start feeding in the right rudder. Got to keep the ball centered. Feeding in more right rudder, nose comes up higher, higher, keep that right rudder in, keep it in, hold that nose up, and then there's the brake. I lower the nose, don't do a secondary stall, and start climbing away again back to a normal pitch attitude. Okay, we can level off, power can come back, and flaps go back up to 0. Okay, we're on the downwind for runway 19 at Brookline. I'll make the radio call. Brookline traffic, Cherokee 5286 Whiskey, left downwind, runway 19, full stop, Brookline. And PM flight has already been completed. My downwind, the correct positioning for it, puts me just to the outside of that cell phone tower, just to the east side of it. I stay at 1,400 feet until we get up by the sand pit. So we're extending beyond the typical 45-degree entry, or 45 degrees off the shoulder that we do at other airports. Alright, here comes the sand pit and the cell phone tower. So once I get to beam them, I will go ahead, power will come back to 18. I hold the nose up, I'm in the white arc, I go 2 notches of flaps, and then I start my base turn and I start trimming for 80. Base turn over the sand pit. There's 80 miles an hour, so now I will leave pattern altitude. Looking out at my runway, it's fully visible. I know you can't see it in the video, but I've got about an inch or two from the top of the hill to the end of the runway. Just kind of give me a visual cue of how it looks. If the runway is obscured, I'm too low. Alright, I start my turn to final, line up on that extended center line, still judging my height, checking, seeing what I think. If I'm too high, I'm going to reduce power. If I'm too low, I'm going to increase power. Also, if I'm too high, I could bring in my 3rd notch of flaps earlier. Alright, I'm on final. I'll go full notch of flaps, and I'm going to slow the airplane to 70. Now, I look real good on my height, so I'm going to slow the airplane to 70 by reducing the power and staying at the same picture, the runway staying at this point in the windscreen. And I'm going to control all my height with power. Got a little tailwind again today, so it's going to take less power than it typically does, but we're all trimmed up for 70. Now, if the runway drops in the windscreen, I need to make that correction right away. Or if it goes up in the windscreen, I need to make that correction right away. Now, if I get low, like right now, the airplane's starting to sink, so I'm going to add a little power, but I'm going to keep the runway in the same place in that windscreen. Cross-checking my airspeed every few seconds, just a quick glance at it. And just look at the airspeed, note what it is, and see if you need to make a correction. Alright, I'm at like 72 miles an hour, so I've got plenty of energy right now. No sink coming off, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the power a little early here. Start my round out of my flare, hold it off. Touchdown, flaps, retracted, and get on the brakes.